For the final session of the 2024 Widening the Pipeline Fellowship Program, Day 2, we're joined by a woman who actually has a very unique and interesting background. She's a nurse, freelance photojournalist, she's a Next Gen Fellow, but she's someone who is going to lead us on a discussion about how to keep ourselves safe as journalists. As I have developed this session, I was very concerned about transmitting a message that we should all be scared or go into the next 4 years with undue concerns or fears. But I think between the Committee to Protect Journalists and IWMF and other organizations, there is a real concerted effort to make sure that we are prepared for what the next 4 years can bring. Our last discussion was about AI, so there's so much to worry about in that regard in terms of misinformation and disinformation. But again, the very real prospect of our mental, emotional, and physical safety is a topic that we can't turn away from. And I want to send you all away from this fellowship, again, with the best information and the best insights about how to hashtag think safety. And that's what the CPJ initiative is all about. So I'd like to introduce you all to Rosem Morton, who will tell you a little bit about her lived experience and her background, but she's going to lead us on an exercise, a journey on how to think safety as journalists. So Rosem, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Rosem Morton. I am based in Baltimore. I started off my career in nursing and then started my career as a freelance photojournalist. And then COVID kind of brought those two things together. And then I just started doing kind of safety sessions for people, how to wear an N95, how to do this and that. And concurrently at that time, the International Women's Media Foundation, they were developing a safety training fellowship to really diversify the field of safety trainers. And I became one of their fellows. So it kind of became this natural path for me as while I'm freelancing and doing my own thing. So that's kind of my background today. Before I get started, I like doing land acknowledgement. So we meet today in Washington, D.C., the land of the Nakatank or the Anacostans, native people and their ancestors who have inhabited this landscape from time immemorial to present day, and we offer them a moment of silence. Thank you very much. So this session today, people often ask me, well, how will I teach safety, right? And in this space, I really want to, of course, content awareness, that we will talk a lot about what issues you're having in your field and line of work, right? Take breaks as needed. You have been here all day. I'm sure you know the bathroom more than I do, which is down the hall to the left, and take your snacks. And I really want us to center learning and growth. This is not a space where I am going to be info dumping to you. This is a space where we will co-learn together. I really respect all the journalists here in the room who come here with a lot of varied experiences. So I want this to be as engaged as possible because, this is a space where we want to be collectively accountable to our learning. It's not an us versus them, and we're all in this together. So with that, just a brief icebreaker. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I'd love to know your name, your pronoun, your role, and what are you hoping to learn today? Just very brief. And then which puppy are you today? I am feeling puppy number 4. I am very much in work mode right now. Do you want to start?
Sure. Hi.
Oh.
Thank you. I'm Sharday White. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an assistant podcast producer, and I hope to learn how to keep sources and the people we talk to safe, because sometimes they're telling us really vulnerable things. And the puppy I'm feeling is, I feel like a 5. He's cute. So
I like.
anyway, so thank you.
Thank you, Sade.
Hello, I'm Julian, he, him pronouns. I'm an arts reporter at the Boston Globe. Hope to learn. I have no expectations. Hope to learn whatever you have to tell us. I'm feeling puppy number 1. I'm a little tired today.
Hey, I'm Keisha. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a general assignment producer at PBS NewsHour. And I'm hoping to learn how to protect my mental health moving forward. And I'm feeling like number 3, puppy number 3.
Okay, I like it.
Hi, my name's Meher Sher. My pronouns are she, her. I am an investigative reporter and currently the associate producer of Fault Lines, an investigative documentary program at Al Jazeera. And what I'm hoping to learn today is how to keep myself safe with the increased visibility and scrutiny that comes with my current role in organization in a hostile climate. And I'm feeling number 2 today.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, do you want to add your puppy
I
today?
was just going to say, I'm Rachel, she, her, and I'm puppy number 2. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Brandon Tinsley. Pronouns are he, him. I'm the national politics reporter at Capital B News. And today I'm hoping to, I think, really learn how to sort of check in on myself sort of psychologically, especially as we get further into like the new administration. I think it's just something that's easy to sort of forget to do. And I'm feeling puppy. I aspire to be puppy 5.
I love that.
Hi, I'm Amber Castillo, Epicenter NYC, part of URL Media Network. She, her. Earlier today I was feeling between 3 and 6, but now I'm 1. I'm hoping to learn, similar to what was already mentioned, like just how to navigate mental health in this time, how to also navigate like difficult conversations, especially with community members during this time, while keeping myself sane and keeping people safe and while navigating trauma and things like that. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Michael Lee. I was previously a K-12 education reporter at a legacy news organization. I'm currently a writer / communications staff member at a local private university back where I live right now. And I'm kind of hoping to learn, and sort of based off of, I know, the survey that we had received, but something I wish I had the tools for in my previous job was how to kind of confront management on not really providing the resources needed to protect ourselves and or confront them about about the fact that they didn't provide me the resources to keep myself, I guess, comfortable and safe. Yeah. Puppy number 2.
Hi there, I'm Kayla Sharp. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a deputy team leader for newsletters at Bloomberg Government, Law, and Tax and Accounting. Today I'm hoping to learn how to best advocate for my team members, the editors and reporters who work under me, whether it's pointing them towards resources that they can utilize or how to best petition our leadership and go up the ladder and petition them to provide us the resources and the support that my team deserves. And I'm feeling puppy number 4. I'm feeling kind of locked in today.
Love it.
Hi, Nashrat Rahman, she, her. I'm an economic mobility reporter at the Detroit Free Press, and I also work with the nonprofit Bridge Detroit in Detroit. And what I'm hoping to learn is more about physical safety tips and advice, especially while out on the field. Sometimes I feel like it's not something that I think about, especially during the rush of reporting and especially during a breaking news environment. And I am puppy number 3.
Okay.
I'm Brianna Rice, she, her. I'm a criminal justice reporter at Michigan Radio. I think I am hoping to learn about strategies to advocate for yourself in your newsroom. Like, all the things we learn here, how to tell my boss when I don't feel safe. I'm puppy 1.
Hi, I'm Aditi. I am a breaking news writer for CNN. Pronouns are she, her. I am hoping to learn a few things. One is just kind of navigating what is a threat and what is something that can be ignored or just, let go of it. And also mental health, avoiding burnout, or if you feel burnout, then how to, get past it. And I'm feeling like a very conflicted version that is a combination of 2 and 4.
I like it.
Hi, my name is Fernanda Figueroa, she, her. I'm the Latino Affairs reporter with the Associated Press. And I'm hoping to learn, kind of like everyone else, just a little bit about protecting my mental health, but also how to avoid burnout. And I am puppy 1 and 2.
Hi, my name is Caroline Colvin, pronouns they, them. I'm a DEI reporter and newsletter lead at HR Dive. I'm hoping to learn how to keep myself safe. In the interest of fairness, I tend to reach out to a lot of conservative advocacy groups, so I'm afraid of getting screenshotted and put on Truth Social and dragged. I feel like puppy number 6 today.
Sorry. My name's Sarah El-Bishbishi. I cover energy and environment at Mountain State Spotlight, which is a nonprofit newsroom in West Virginia. My pronouns are she, her, and I am hoping to learn, I think, best practices, best safety practices for going out in the field. I go out to rural America every time I go out on an assignment in West Virginia, and I draw a lot of stairs, but also on that dealing kind of just like being able, best practices to deal with the kind of the fatigue of being kind of the odd one out, in the newsroom and inside and outside of the newsroom. And I don't know, let's shake it up. I guess I'll be feeling like a 5 right now. I guess. I don't know.
Hi, my name's Lily Smith. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a photojournalist at the Des Moines Register. So, I am hoping to learn about what aspects of my personal safety that I haven't been taking seriously enough. And I'm feeling like puppy number 2, like staring out a window because I really miss my cat right now.
How am I supposed to follow that? I'm Olivia Evans, business reporter at the Courier Journal, she, her. I'm hoping to learn how to assess situations out in the field on my own without just listening to some misguided advice from editors who are back in the newsroom. Had a not so ideal experience last year, and I'm hoping to avoid those situations in the future. And I am puppy number 2.
Hi, Bradford Davis. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a columnist and editorial board member of the Fort Worth Star Telegram. I think that my hope is to just understand again how to safely navigate sources and incendiary, subject matters that I know will piss off people who are rich, powerful, bigoted, or all 3. And my puppy is 4 and 5 because I'm feeling the weight of work right now, but also my birthday is tomorrow, and so I'm trying to hang out tonight. Anyway, so that's it.
Hi, I'm Bianca Quilantan. I'm a education reporter at Politico. I am hoping to learn, I guess, like, is it okay to be oblivious about being like talked about online, and when should you know? Like, I think we have a lot of mutes on sometimes. Also, I don't know that I'm being dragged on podcasts sometimes, and so until people bring it up to me in person. So that's what I deal with. Oh, and also how to deal with people that come to your door sometimes. Yeah, I had a private investigator come to my door once after a story I wrote. So, and so the puppy I am is 6 even after all that. So
I'm Ida Lee, she, her. I'm with Borderless Magazine in Chicago. What I'm hoping to learn today is how to protect myself as a woman who, like most stories that I write about, are in some of the most dangerous parts of Chicago, honestly. And so I've been working in newsrooms that have limited resources. So how can I best look out for myself given the limited resources? And the puppy that I am today, I just had like half a cup of coffee and I think I'm back to like a 5.
Hi, I'm Almaz, she, her pronouns. I'm a social video producer at AP. I don't really have any like expectations, just kind of excited to learn the basics of safety in tense environments. And puppy 1 is speaking to me right now, so I'll say 1.
That's good. Do you want to share your puppy?
Sure. I'm Ann Godlaski. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the president of NPF. I feel like I know a lot about how to support journalists' mental health, but I am very concerned about journalists, increasingly concerned, I should say, about journalists' physical health. I think I started out as puppy 4, and I'm sort of puppy 1 right now, but I will definitely make it through this. So thank you.
Thank you. McCase, do you want to join us and add your puppy? Sid.
Hello, I'm Sydney. I'm MPF's multimedia producer, she, her pronouns. Today, a 1, but I would love to get to 5.
Okay.
Just curious about, the tips that you have to share with us. I freelance on the side, so I'm still, active in the field. So just good information just to have in general.
Thank you.
I'm Milky Eskasai. I'm lead audio video lighting tech for AVLD events. Puppy number 4. And just curious to learn anything, whatever you have planned for us.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate everyone sharing, where they're from and what they're hoping to learn. I think it really will inform today's session. Like today's session is only an hour and a half. So, I mean, there is a chance that we won't really hit all of the concerns that you have, but I will share resources and we can always talk offline specifically for the digital aspect that it sounds like a lot of folks have concerns about that. Because like the digital portion is usually like another hour and a half of its own like beast, right? I also really appreciate the people who filled out the survey. I did not realize that they sent out the longest survey ever. So I really appreciate people who shared those, and it was really, it really informed me in putting together the slides. So first and foremost, right, when we talk about safety, historically, people often think about safety in the context of war photography, but no, now it's really changed, right? War journalism, but now it's changed. We're thinking about it in a really holistic way when we think about the physical aspect, the digital aspect, maybe the legal aspect, and also the mental health. And that's what we're kind of hoping to really cover today and address this concept of holistic safety. And then, so in your own words, what are the kinds of risks that journalists typically face? You could just popcorn some thoughts. Protests, yes. Cyberbullying.
Doxing.
Yeah. I'll just repeat what they say if that's helpful for the...
All right.
Sorry. Physical altercation, doxing, yes. Sorry? Shootings.
Frivolous but incredibly expensive lawsuits.
Yes, exactly, right? So there's so many different risks that we face as journalists, and I kind of put it in different buckets, and it's not even an exhaustive list, right? There's the physical aspect in protests, of other people getting physical. There's reputational harm that can also turn into legal harm or digital safety. There's also tying into the cyber cyber risk. There's, of course, the legal aspects. There's psychosocial aspect, which is a really big bucket, and then the financial aspect, which is also just incredibly hard to face, especially if you're working on by yourself in the field. So when we think about all of these risks, we want to think about how to manage it, right? We can't be in a bubble where you're completely safe. Like, you can't assure anybody that I'll be 100% safe. So a lot of it really comes to the before, during, after, where the bulk of the work is in the before, where you really want to plan as much as possible and create different layers of protection for yourself, so that when you're on the field or when you're doing your work, you are able to protect yourself and manage the risk as much as possible. So first and foremost, of course, as journalists, right, we do our research. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just a list to get us thinking, right? We often think about the location, the history of the place, different power structures, things like that. Anyone else want to throw in what they typically research for the work that they do? Yes.
Especially if I'm going somewhere that's very like unfamiliar to me, I might look up sort of like different local like organizations in case I need any sort of help. And I remember I got that because somebody told me once, like he was doing like a safety training before the RNC, and some of our journalists were going, and someone was just like, well, if anyone in your organization like needs help, or like things pop off and they need a like place to like stay for the night or something, like let us know. And so I started thinking of like potential resources in the area.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is really where the saying safety in numbers is really true, right? We make friends with our colleagues, but we also make friends with the locals and the organizers to really create more protections for ourselves. Anyone else had their hands up?
I actually put together a Google Doc with like all the organizations I reach out to and like a contact. And then I also, depending on if it's like a couple of days or a day trip, I'll do places to stay that I like Google image. Like I look at like the street view to make sure it's not shady. And then possible places to stay. And then places to go get food or to stop based on like what the street view is. Just because there's a lot of isolated places in some of the places that I go. And last thing I want to do is do that. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, it's really important, right? Like we are experts in researching, and so researching as much as you can really helps. Yes.
I ask Black people like where I should go. Straight up, like, what should I know about this place? What should I know about, how to conduct myself, and what would you do if you had to be there? So. Yeah,
I mean, I think like utilizing any resource that you have is just really, really important to the work that we do. And a lot of our research filters into risk assessment. Who here has done a risk assessment? Raise your hands. Okay. This is about the number of people I usually see raise their hands in a room. And I think risk assessments are important because it's a way to really structure how you plan for an assignment. Like, I'm not asking you to make pages and pages and pages more work, but it'll just provide a little bit more structure to what you're doing now. Can anyone here, sorry, I have a lot, everything is, I'm gonna make you come up with the. Anyone here define risk assessment in their own words? Yes.
Just staring at you. So you evaluate where the risk is, what the probabilities of that risk are, and then you decide what you can do to mitigate that risk, if at all.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly what it is. Okay, so in other words, people call that threat modeling, which is exactly what you said, where you think about the different risks, how likely is it to happen, and what are the ways I can mitigate that. So essentially, it's a general approach to identifying any vulnerabilities, thinking about what are your security needs, and what fits in your unique circumstance, right? So again, when people ask me, oh, what should I do in this very specific situation? It's very hard for me to often answer, like I'll give a black and white answer, right? Like I can give you a list of things you can do, but ultimately, not one of them will absolutely assure your safety. So like being able to plan what are the possible things I can put to place, it becomes really important. So there's two basic components of risk, right? The likelihood that it is going to happen, and the impact, like how will it change you what are the consequences if it happens? So mitigations are the measure that decrease the likelihood of a risk and decrease the severity of the impact, right? So this is kind of an example of the most basic risk assessment template. Like, it doesn't have to be crazy, right? But thinking about, what are the hazards, who and what is at risk, thinking about, what is the level of risk, like what are the consequences if it does happen, how likely would it happen, right? And what are the ways that I can prevent that from happening. I can move to the side. Okay, good, okay. So here's kind of an example, right? So if you're going to a place where there's a big crowd, right? Maybe in this particular place, you already know the hazard would be spotty cell service, right? So that will affect me and my team. It could be nothing, right? It could be negligible, or it could be pretty moderate. It depends on like how important communications are. And, maybe it's a place that often doesn't have signal. Maybe you have T-Mobile like me that's like so crappy in certain parts of the US, right? So it's probably certain for me, right? So then maybe a risk mitigation would be having a meeting point set up at this place, having written maps, things like that, right? Things that are already doing, but just adding some structure to it kind of helps you not forget things as you're planning, especially when you're planning to do riskier and riskier stories and things like that. Any questions so far? Okay. So this is kind of an exaggerated visual, right? When we think about risk, this is, life when we just kind of dilly-dally, not thinking about our safety at all. And hopefully, right, when we apply security measures, we have a safety harness at hand. All right, so I asked the room, when do you think a risk assessment is necessary?
Protests.
Yes? Conflict zones. Anything else?
Highly controversial stories.
Yeah? Yes? Oh, sorry. Protests, conflict zones, highly controversial stories. Yeah, anytime you feel uncomfortable going out in the field. I actually would argue all the time, right? When we leave our house, right, we think about our safety all the time. When we enter our car, we put our safety seatbelt on. We think about our speed limit. We do risks to keep ourselves safe all the time. And I challenge you, why don't we think about this when we go do our work, right? When there's so many different elements that we don't often get to control. So my question again now is, whose responsibility is it to do a risk assessment?
Ours?
Yeah, everyone, everyone. Because again, I think this session, my hope for this session is to normalize talking about safety, right? Like oftentimes in a lot of newsrooms, they only talk about safety for the highest of high risks. And if we always normalize talking about it, right, and then it becomes everyone's responsibility to think about safety, to advocate for safety, and to normalize that. Do you think participants' identities affect the risk rating? Yes, okay, I see all the nods, yes. And then this is also a place where it's important to ask, how high is your appetite for risk, right? You could be working as a team, and then there's a protest happening there, and you didn't realize that your partner is all about the action, right? Like, does not care about their own safety and is running over there. Maybe you're a little bit more risk averse, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so what happens when you split up? Because you have a difference in appetite for risk. So even normalizing safety conversations, this is where you can think of a plan that satisfies their working needs and your working needs and both of your safety. Who do you think owns the risk?
Individual own the risk?
Yeah, the individual definitely owns the risk. If you work under an institution at a certain level, they can also be affected by the risk. And then doing the risk assessment is also where we can ask, have you undergone safety training? Like, what is your level of comfortability in doing certain things, right? And another question, what happens to risk assessments in the field?
They change.
Exactly, they change. You don't have to write it out again, but I think the biggest piece of when it changes is really being able to communicate that with your team, right? Things are always so dynamic. When you get there, it's not always what you expect it to be. But the most important piece is being able to communicate that. And then this is also a place where you could do some advocacy work, where are there additional resources that I need to mitigate the risk, right? If, for example, my certain newsroom, we all cover protests all the time, and we realize that it's very likely for physical injuries to happen, but we don't have any PPE, right? This could be a place where where people could come together and be like, well, maybe this is something we really should talk about. So as part of the risk assessment, as I mentioned earlier, is thinking about our identities, right? My identity is how I see myself. My profile is how other people see me. And that could be based on race, gender, nationality, ethnicity, religious sect. It could be any and all of these things and more. It could even be just wearing a badge or not wearing a badge. So a lot of our safety is really affected by our own personal profile. So, and when we talk about profile, oftentimes we also talk about high profile versus low profile. Am I gonna try to blend in, or am I gonna stand out? And I think historically, people always think that, oh, blending in is the safest route. And it's not always the safest route, right? So it's really, a lot of it is situational, right? For journalists like Maria Ressa in the Philippines, she's not gonna be safe being low profile. She has to be as high profile as possible. So for the ex-President Duterte, for him to not assassinate her, right? So thinking about I find that when we often talk about identity and profile, people often think about, oh, I have to minimize my identity or my profile to be safe, which is true. That does happen a lot. But also sometimes we do lean into that as well to gain special access. So it's not, I don't want people to think of it as a disadvantage always, right? It's just a way that we code switch and kind of adapt to whatever situation we're in. Does anyone have any thoughts, questions, anything to share regarding that? Yes.
How do you, I mean, unless you have some really obvious factors, how do you know when you've kind of, let's say you're a low profile person and you can take that sedan, but then how do you know that you've become a Maria Ressa and you need like the high profile, like standout thing? Like, do you just have to take advice and like have other people weigh in, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for specific to her, right? Like she was always.
That's just I just took an example,
yeah. Okay.
But like Yeah,
I mean, I think a lot of that is really situational. Like, for example, for her situation, she was always high profile, and it really worked for her to stay high profile. And sometimes we don't always get to stay high profile versus low profile. An example I have is I went to one of my very first projects was going to the Philippines, and it's in the southwestern part of the Philippines, and it was where a lot of really contentious groups are in that area. So people were really fearful for my life, but I was doing a story that was not really about the geopolitical tension. But my plan was, I'm going to be there low profile, I'm going to show up as Filipino as possible, and I'm going to look the part, right? But when I got there, the island was so small that everybody knew each other, that I was high profile regardless of what the situation was. So then I just had to adjust being high profile and then kind of really leaning into that and being safer in that way. Because then people are like, oh, why did you visit us? And then I just really leaned into really wanting to learn about their culture. And then that kind of worked out for me in terms of safety. So sometimes you come in with an idea also of which profile should I lean into, and it doesn't also always turn out that way. I think the biggest piece of that is really reading the room, being really in tune with your gut, because I feel like your gut really doesn't leads you astray, right? But I hope that answers that question. Anyone else have any thoughts or questions? Okay. And then this slide is really to think about folks in the managerial space, right? Like us, for myself, who works in the field as an individual, I have my own individual concerns about my risk and how I manage risk. And the people managing me have a different lens of how they look at safety. Like they may not necessarily think of my safety as an individual. They think of it as an operational context and an organizational context. So again, this is really where we can give each other grace and communication becomes really important. Again, another big part of risk assessment is really thinking about the different actors, right? Actor mapping, right? You want to think about who are the different actors in this space, what are their motives, and what typically methods do they use. In very broadly, this could be different political parties, their supporters. It could be activists and their supporters, the general public, law enforcement, military, extremist or terrorist groups, whoever has money, power, and influence. And it could be just the different local groups in the area or non-locals in the area. So this is an example, right, of actor mapping. This is kind of what we were doing leading up to the election. So this is the DC map. The Southern Poverty Law Center kind of maps out each state and then has like these little dots that show you where the hotspots are for far-right extremist groups in the US. So specifically in DC, there are 13 very strong groups in this area. And then just like thinking about, the different actors, right? So for folks who are concerned about their digital safety, right? Who are you, which actor are you afraid of? Because again, they're gonna have different tactics, right? The police will have much more sophisticated things that you have to protect yourself from versus like a general Joe Schmo in the road, right? So again, this is where actor mapping becomes really important when we think about protests and things like that. That maybe the militia group will use different things versus law enforcement. So this is again where it becomes really important to really understand who are the players, what are their motives, and what are the things that they utilize to threaten your safety. This is just kind of diving in a little bit into that for specific to like protest coverage, right? So when we think about security force tactics, they do it in 3 chunks. Their first goal is to contain people. So as soon as they put their visor down, like that they're on the move. So if they're not wearing their visors up yet, that's pretty much green to yellow, right? And then as soon as they put the visor down, that they're gonna act. And the first thing that they do is start to contain everyone and try to disperse everyone by using tear gas, pepper spray, all sorts of stuff. And then when everyone is contained, this is when they arrest and use detention to get people. And then these are, as you know, the weapons that they use nowadays. So they call them non-lethal weapons and less lethal projectors. It's quite lethal. So they should change that name. So they use riot control chemical gases, which is tear gas and pepper spray. They can disorient you by using flashbang and stun grenade. Or they could use different kinds of projectile, which is rubber bullets, or pepper balls, which is paintball with pepper spray, or sting ball grenades with 100 rubber balls when it explodes. Anyone have thoughts, questions? Okay. So again, in the face of risk assessment and planning, right? Now we want to think about, okay, how can I prepare for all of those risks, right? So it could be thinking about your profile, thinking about how to communicate, meeting points, transportation, what are the PPEs that I should bring? Should I think about insurance, legal rights, digital security? For a mental health standpoint, what are your boundaries? Thinking about what to bring and what's your contingency plan. Yes?
Hello. Okay. So I have a question about the communication aspect. I know my direct boss and my editor that I work with on a daily basis, like she would certainly take into consideration like the individual aspects that you were talking about. But quick anecdote. So last year in April, there was a mass shooting in Louisville, and then less than an hour later, there was a second shooting within 5 blocks. And they sent me to the second shooting because they already had people at the mass shooting site. And the editor that was in charge was their breaking news editor. And I asked, I was like, where's the address? Like, where are they saying the shooting is? And he said, I don't know, just follow the sirens. I have never worked a day of breaking news in my life. I've never done like anything breaking news. So I got in my car, followed the sirens, quite literally followed the cops down the wrong way on one-way streets, parked behind the cops, and then just like got out of my car and was like looking for someone to talk to, and ended up having to like seek shelter with a police officer in a parking garage. It was not a great situation. But in my mind, at that moment, when the editor said, just follow the sirens, I was like, okay, he's seasoned. He's been in this industry for a long time. He's thinking about the things that I don't know as someone who has quite literally never, ever done this. So obviously I know that's not the case. Like editors that you don't work with don't always think about your specific needs. So how do you communicate that, especially in like in an intense moment where there is something actively going on? Like we do need to get a reporter out there, but how do I make sure an editor that I don't work with on a daily basis understands the safety elements, the risk assessment? Like how do I actually have that conversation?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question because, you know, again, it is going to be really situational. Like, I don't know his personality and how he would take feedback, right? But I think finding a way to communicate that, like, I don't necessarily know if that's a good idea for me to follow them. I'll give it a shot. If that's kind of where you're leaning at, to kind of give it a shot. And if you have like a strong feeling that this is really not safe. For me, I as a freelance photojournalist, what I do, I think I am much more direct on email. Like I already know that. Like I cannot be direct on you via phone, so I'll just email it out. I'll just say, hey, I'll take on this assignment, but I'm not taking it after dark by myself. Or I'll just say, or I'll just do the assignment however I wanted to do, and then I'll just send them a paragraph of why I made certain choices that I knew would be against their advice. And then when you always kind of paraphrase it in a way that it was for a safety reason that I chose not to follow the sirens anymore, and I went this direction, like no one is gonna like get mad at you for that when you always have like it's a safety issue if I had continued down that road. Does that make sense? And does anyone else have other ideas on how to tackle that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a shooting, but like we used to cover wildfires in California, and so we'd have discussions beforehand about what we needed to prepare for, like in case they do have to send you out immediately, and then you can talk to them afterwards to create a plan. So maybe now that it's already happened, I mean, shootings aren't going away. They're gonna send you to another one, but maybe there's like a strategy that you guys can talk about, like, hey, you know, thanks for sending me out there. Thanks for trusting me to cover this. But like, can we set up a plan on how to make sure that we're safe doing this? Because like I said, like for fires, I was like, I don't know where the PPE is. I'm going to burn up if they just send me out there. Right. So same thing with shootings. So yeah, just to know where all the stuff is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. You had your hand up? Oh yeah. Anyone else wanted to comment on that before we jump into a different question? Okay.
I wanted to say that I also think it's to echo Rosem's comment about like putting it in writing. Not only is it easier to express yourself, but I also think it's important to have that in writing so that if your boss then comes back and says, well, I want you to do it anyway, like you have in writing, I don't feel safe doing this. And now they're telling you like on the record essentially to do the thing. I don't know how legally like workman's comp would happen if you did, God forbid, get injured, but then you also have like in writing that I did not feel safe in this situation. My boss told me to get an unsafe situation, and if you need to like sue your employer, at least you have it in writing.
So I had a question mostly about, and maybe you'll answer this a little later, but you know, when it talks about preparation and mitigation, especially when it comes to digital security, you know, there are quite literally some things that you cannot secure due to obviously like public record information, you know, laws. Like, for example, you know, one of my biggest concerns at one of my previous jobs for my own personal safety was the fact that, you know, my voter registration information is very easily accessible online and it's attached to my parents' home address in a completely different state, right? And so if groups end up doxing you as a reporter, you know, can't really like help that, right? And especially when you kind of feel hopeless, again, being away from family that would be directly affected by this. And I'm curious, like, are there mitigation strategies around that kind of information that cannot be protected?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. Specifically we've found, I mean, I'm not saying that it's totally okay, but we've found that people actually don't rely on voter registration to dox journalists. So in that sense, you're still kind of safe. I think one of the ways that Jeff, the security director at IWMF, advises people is to have an LLC and to have your address through an LLC and have like kind of that mediator to kind of have a second layer of protection. But again, for voter registration, you cannot really hide that. But to access someone's voter registration, they have to access your birthday, right? So again, those personal information that you have online is very important to secure. And this is where Delete Me comes in. This is where you want to think about your social media. Like, do you say, "Oh, another year around the world," on your birthday? Like even just those like hints that it's your birthday. Like, do those exist? And really, really calling out your public-facing profile. If I was a journalist investigating myself, like, what information am I giving out? And just to build on that, this kind of scares people a little bit. I was doing a session and this one journalist was telling me, oh yeah, a friend of mine at a party said that, oh, there's this influencer who always posts her photos wherever she is in the world, but she never says where she is, her location, but I just reverse Google searched her location and found where she was at. So like sometimes, the technology is there to really give people like a little bit of an edge to find us. So we just want to create a lot of different layers. So every post, think about what like subliminal messaging about my location, about my profile is it sharing? And is it really important for me to share that? So it's balance, yes.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, I think, I guess, are there any guidelines because I use myself as an example because the state that I'm from actually only requires first, last name, and county.
That's crazy.
And so I just double checked. I searched it up, and I was like, that's not great. But yeah, I'm curious. Are there, I guess, potential changes in education surrounding this? With your organization or especially since it seems like it is a state by state thing of how easily accessible your information is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think that's kind of a tricky thing to kind of navigate that state by state. What I've personally done, because I'm paranoid, is like I just registered as independent. Like I don't want to be tied any which way. So anything that like the information is there. Like for example, anytime I register a photograph at the library for copyright, like they have my address, right? Like, but thankfully the people right now, they're not looking to voter registration. They're not looking at the copyright place to look at people's address, right? They're just doing the good old Google search. So just creating a lot of ways to make that hard for them will hopefully be enough to deter them. So like using services like Delete Me and things like that. And folks here know Delete Me. Is there anyone here who does not? We can talk about it. Okay, oh yeah. So for example, when you Google yourself on the internet and you find yourself in like the yellow pages, and then there's your name and there's like a obscured address, obscured telephone number. So there's services called Delete Me where they delete that from the internet or from every yellow page that exists out there. It's quite expensive. IWMF, I think they still have the program where it's like free for journalists, so please email them. So that's just a really good thing. And also think about doing that for your family members or people you live in, or like at least when you sign up for the program, you put your email, your telephone number, all of the addresses you've had, all of the emails you've had, and it'll scrub it from the internet, which is really nice. So then if you have family members in the same household, you could also just do that so that it kind of scrubs that out. It does not scrub out your personal website, social media, or anything like that. It only scrubs out your personal data that is on the yellow pages that people sell your information and data for. You can do it manually, which is really hard, and I've never met anyone who's done it manually because they can also legally put it back after a few months. And that's why delete me is a service, which is very evil capitalist way of handling it. But that's for another day. Oh, also for journalists, if the IWMF code doesn't work anymore, it's also, if you type in press, if you email them and say press 50, you get 50% off. I forgot about that. Yes.
So that my question is related to that actually. So I just Googled my name and my address and like my information like came up. And so it sounds like this is something that can like scrub it from like Yellow Pages, but does it work for other websites that are similar to that, like Fast People Search?
Yes.
And then also like, can you proactively prevent like that from happening? So like say it is scrubbed, but could it reappear on these websites again? Is there a way that we can mitigate our personal information from existing on these websites in the future?
Yeah, so unfortunately, you just have to keep the subscription to keep it off. Because after a while, right, if somebody else sends your data again to them, they'll put it up. So it's really like this machine that keeps deleting it over and over. And then if you move, you just go log in on Delete Me and add the new address that they have to scrub out, things like that. But that's a great question. Any other questions? Okay, I will infuse as many digital security stuff as well. Also, when we think about before, I know a lot of people ask about mental health. You know, I challenge people, we don't often think about our mental health during the work that we do. We often think about it at the very end when we're all burnt out, when we're done, right? And again, you know, this might be a place where in the before, you know, we think about, do I have any vulnerabilities that need attending to, or that makes this project challenging? Like if I have been covering shootings, mass shootings for a while, and I know I'm coming into an assignment that is about a mass shooter, like how can I plan out my self-care during? That could be just making sure I take a 5-minute break, making sure I eat. You know, like I think just that coping ahead, planning ahead makes a lot of difference. And then also, and then we'll talk more about the during after that. But again, I think when we think about self-care, people make it seem like, oh, it's a big spa day. Like, it doesn't have to be like that. It can be in small moments. It could be taking deep breath, like 10 really deep breaths in a moment when you're feeling really stressed and overwhelmed. It could be phoning a friend, letting them know, hey, I'm gonna do this potentially really difficult assignment today. Can we hop on a call later tonight and just have some support? So I think I challenge you to think creatively about like what are the little moments that you can infuse for mental health, and it will also help with kind of sustaining yourself throughout this journey. And then now, you know, this is kind of a generic, you know, what to bring list. And then of course it changes with whatever it is that we're doing. Anyone here have specific things that they always bring with them?
I always carry my passport, and that might be a little trauma from, I think it was during the Obama administration when they were like debating whether or not to like do the show me your papers thing. So my mom was like, always carry your passport, and now I always carry it just because like you never know nowadays, especially with the new administration. And it's like a really like gonna protect my physical safety, but it is kind of like, at least, you know, ICE won't stop me and be like, let me send you back.
Yeah, I mean, I think those fears are absolutely valid and super real. And bringing your passport is not just like a physical safety, it also is a mental health aspect to it too. So thank you for sharing.
I have a couple of blankets in the back, and then I have probably everything in the back of my car. Sorry, that sounds weird out of context, but I have blankets just in case. I drive through the mountains often, and sometimes you never know. And then a lot of just like jumper cables and anything that I might need for my car, like God forbid, but like just in case, because I'm driving several hours.
Thank you.
I carry not one, not two, but 3 power banks on me. And charging cables at all time, including an iPhone one, even though sometimes iPhone people are mean about my Android phone. But I do have a charger for you if you need it.
Oh, that's great. That's really sweet. A couple more folks over there.
Extra shoes and socks. there's a full like other pair of shoes in my trunk at all times.
I love that.
I keep pepper spray with me, and when I'm going to assignments, like I'm often in assignments alone with a lot of men, and it'll be times where it's like just me and like a gaggle of men. And while I hope and choose to believe they won't do anything bad, I just keep that pepper spray strapped just in case.
Yeah.
This isn't something that you'd actually bring, but like my phone has like location services. Like if I have service, making sure that like everyone knows that I'm out and like to be periodically checking it, especially if I'm like more anxious.
Yeah, that's great. That will be part of the communication, I think, in next couple slides. No, it's great. No, that's important. It's still part of what you bring. Anyone else adding anything? Yeah, also for safety, I actually was traveling, and post-election, I learned, right, I was like, this is a really funny story. I was cutting my bangs. I forgot to get scissors to cut my bangs, so I went to CVS, and I realized the beard trimmers are super sharp, and they're under 4 inches, so that means I can fly with them, and I could, yeah, so I just have a very, very sharp scissor on my fanny pack at all times. Because again, you can't have a pepper spray with you at all times. So I have a pepper spray on the moments that I can. I have those like super loud things that you just pull it apart. I forget what the personal alarms. I have all sorts of stuff. I have an LED flashlight that can blind people. I think after post-elections, I just ramped up everything that I could to just ensure my personal safety, because I am a very tiny woman. And then again, this is more thinking about high-risk coverage, right? When we think about PPE, this is the kind of, we recommend a level 3 or 4 for body armor. For head protection, you want it to be ASTM and CPSC certified. Those are just the really important pieces of that. For eye protection, you want the ANSI. And then for any of your respirators, you want to make sure that the organic vapor cartridges are in combination with any of these filters. Okay. Also, other things to think about on high risk, of course, wearing shoes with good ankle support, avoid wearing black. We love to wear black. I love to wear black, but thinking about how you might be seen, what might your profile be if you wear black all the time. If you have long hair like me, you don't want it on a high ponytail because it will be really easy to grab. And then thinking about where do you put your press ID. Putting it on your neck is a choking hazard. So folks are saying, you could put it on your pocket or anywhere that is very easy to grab. The only other thing, though, if you put it in your pocket, it could slip out and fall, right, with the plastic. So this is where kind of a belt kind of might be extra helpful to just kind of secure it in place. If you're particularly concerned with any fire, avoid any synthetic fabrics and just make sure you wear 100% cotton. So now we kind of are going to communication, right? These are kind of questions that we can't super dive in all digital security, but thinking about what devices do we need to bring? How do we communicate with colleagues on the ground and in the office? Can they track me? What kind of tracking apps should I use? If you're thinking that, if you're doing a greater threat assessment of the actors, right? If they have more sophisticated, like if you're investigating a government, right? This might be where you might think about who might be surveilling my devices, my accounts, and my networks. Might be a space where you want to think about using VPNs. Anyone here uses a VPN? Okay. Anyone here not know a VPN? I'm happy to explain. Okay. And then again, thinking about what happens if those devices, accounts, or networks are compromised, right? Like, do you have backups? Are you using very, very strong, unique passwords that you only use for one account? Or are you using the same password for the same thing every time, right? And, sometimes people think it's not that, it's not that big of a deal. Like, what are they gonna get when I, have the same password for my Pinterest or whatever, right? But what if you're, shopping for your kids and having a board for your kid there and you got hacked. So then you're sharing the profile that you have a child, right? So sometimes you don't necessarily know what you're giving up. Like your Venmo, people don't have their Venmo private, so you know all of your friends, you know your transactions. People who do running apps and share their location, your starting point and your end point is at your house. So think about your digital footprint, that's really important. And if those devices are compromised, what information is out there about you? And then also thinking about, we've talked about this a little bit already, the social media posts, and thinking it's not just about what I'm posting, but it's also about who's posting, right? Like if my parents, like my dad is so bad at social media, my dad is so bad at Facebook, he has everyone's names, everyone's locations there. So I might be the most tech savvy, digital safe person out there, but if he comments and somebody just clicks on his profile and then I'm ratted out, right? So also think about who are the closest to you, how are they engaging, and what is their security like? And that's a hard thing to navigate for sure. It sounds like a number of you travel here as well, right? For your work. And also thinking about what size is the city are you staying in? Are you traveling by yourself? We talked about how high or low profile you're going to be. How might your accommodation affect your safety? How long are you going to stay? And then maybe, are there already security measures in place? And who else is staying in that place? An example I had was I was doing a story in the Philippines in Palawan in one of the islands. And I just booked a random hotel. I didn't even really think much of it. And I realized it was like a military hotel. Like every day there's a truckload of military men that go in and out of this hotel. And I was like, oh wow, it's very high profile. Do I feel safe with that or do I not feel safe with that, right? So I chose to be more low profile and I moved different hotels. But some people might find safety in that, right? So it really depends on the situation. This is also when we want to think about transportation, right? We travel a lot. We want to think about not only what's in our car as safety stuff, right? But we also want to think about general vehicle check, emergency supplies. How are you parked? Are you parked in a way that you can't get away? Especially if it's a more dynamic environment. Do you need to change your route? And then thinking about, again, the profile of your car. Another quick example I have of that was for some reason when I get rental cars, I get a Mustang. So weird. So I was in rural Ohio and they gave me this white Mustang and I was like, but I was like, it's fine. It's not that big of a story, but I really stood out. Like everywhere I go, everywhere I would go there anyway, I was already standing out. And then with this flashy car, it was already a standout, right? The next time, I think I was doing a conference in Texas and I got another Mustang and it's red. And I was like, this is bad. But I was like too passive. I was like, it's okay. It's high profile. It's whatever. I did. That's true. They were offering me a truck, but I was like, I don't know if I could drive a truck. But then again, I got pulled over because of the Mustang, right? So again, thinking about high versus low profile, not just within myself and how I dress, it could also be the transportation you're at. And then thinking about weather, it's not super big here, but when we did a lot of sessions in the Midwest, right, weather is such a big consideration over there. So thinking about that, and then this is really where time versus exposure becomes really important. Sorry, I'm kind of buzzing in. I feel like I'm going to be short on time. And then also, sorry, it's a bad slide. So once we've done all of the planning, which sounds like a lot, right? But also I don't want to intimidate you so much because you've already been doing the planning. This is just providing a lot more structure. On a mental health standpoint, right, when we plan ahead, we think about our mental health and maybe during our assignment, things are really hard. Is there a way just to zoom out and see a bigger picture of why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, kind of center it to the importance of why we're doing it? Maybe that will help in the moment. Maybe using breathing, grounding, or different kinds of techniques to ground yourself briefly in the moment. And then what are the ways you can honor your boundaries throughout the assignment as well. Any thoughts or questions about that? Yes.
It's just a really, like, just a, I guess, footnote on the breathing exercise is that it doesn't happen just on the day off. Like, you need to be doing that, like, as a discipline, cultivating it so that it helps on the day when you need it out of, like, crisis mitigation.
Oh, absolutely. And again, also, the more that you practice it, the faster that resource will come to you. So thank you for sharing that. Does anyone here use any kind of breathing, grounding, or resourcing technique in their own life or in their practice? Do you just do breathing, or you do other things as well?
Well, I mean, there's like different parts of it. There's like this yoga technique called pranayam. So I mostly do that every day. It's just like a 10-minute nose breathing exercise. And if I can't actually manage to sit on the floor and do that, at least I still have the breathing like deep and breathing out to do when I really need to.
Oh, great. Thanks for sharing that. Yes.
I will say something that's grounding to me is typically I just try and play like music that's really comforting, especially when I'm commuting from or to like a reporting assignment that's going to be stressful. I feel like as someone who has like sensory issues, I feel like that's really helpful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think we often forget how important it is to engage your senses, and that's a really big piece of grounding. Yes.
Thank you. So I'm a big fan of the Calm app. I love like the short little meditations that go from like 2 minutes all the way up to an hour. But specifically, I like to do body scans, and after I've started doing them a few years ago, but when I'm on my way to like a stressful reporting assignment or anything like that, once I get there and once I'm parked, I like to just sit in my car and do like a 5-minute body scan. If I have less time, even like 90 seconds to 2 minutes is sufficient. But just sort of the focus on breathing through every part of my body and like going bit by bit and being fully in tune really grounds me and makes me feel leveled and ready to go into anything.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Yes.
So I don't know how helpful this would be for other people, but something that I do when I'm heading into a really stressful reporting environment is I tell myself that it's going to be over soon. So like, okay, I'm driving, it takes 40 minutes to get there. I know I'm going to be out reporting for like maybe an hour or two, maybe on the scene. Okay, in my head, that's like 3 hours and it's going to be over. So it's just the passage of time that I need to like, so that really helps me as I'm driving to the place, is that I'm going to get through it. I'm going to get over it. And then the assignment's going to be over. So that's a little mental exercise that I do. And I don't know how helpful that would be for other people, but it's helped me in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's helpful. That's part of coping ahead, right? Like you're already anticipating what the day is going to be like, what your needs are, and things like that. So yeah, definitely helpful. Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing, right? There's a lot of different ways people engage. It could be like having some like trinkets that they kind of fiddle with, having kind of a scent stick. So whatever ways that you can engage your senses. And then we've talked about, again, risk assessment is flexible. Right, they're not set in stone. They're living, breathing documents, and things might change on the ground. But the biggest piece of that is having a way to communicate with your team and have everyone understand. And again, this is all. And then during, right, another big piece of that is thinking about situational awareness. We want to think about where are you, what are the safe havens, where are the exits, who's around you, what are they wearing, what are they doing. Did they change behavior, right? Did the crowd suddenly feel aggressive, right? Those are things that are really important. And also, how about the other members of your team, right? We could be reacting to the crowd, or the crowd could be reacting to us, and that's just a really important piece. And this is also where the mental health piece becomes really important, because when your cup is not filled, right, you're slower to react. You're slower to being safe. So again, it's really important, right? The cycle of trying to take care of ourselves in this process, because overall, it will also keep us safe in really dynamic situations. And then just overall personal safety, right? Thinking about arriving early. I struggle with that, working on it. Again, reading the crowd, getting in touch with your gut feelings, knowing your limits on when to get out and it's okay to leave. And then in crowds or high-risk situations, you want to think about where are reunion points? Are there any vantage points to think about? Security points, bathrooms, safe havens, or evacuation routes. And then also, like, if you have a buddy system, have an actual plan, right? Like, you can have a buddy, but you've never really talked about how they're going to watch you, how you're going to watch them, right? And that can also become its own liability if there's no really advanced communication beforehand. And another big piece to think about is exposure time. How many images or how much interview or how much footage do I really need to tell this story versus my own safety, right? And then acceptance that it always changes. And the biggest piece of this is trusting your gut and honoring your boundaries. So quick question. Anyone here knows how do I move through a hostile crowd? Yes.
So I did the training that so I did the training that the foundation provides. It's like 4 or 5 days. So the method that we learned is you like grab people by grab your group by that and just kind of push forward because people will eventually, like, as you push forward, you have to move, but you have to do it in a circle so like none of you guys get separated through the crowd because it's easier to cross like as a circle than to cross as a line.
Correct. Yes.
And I recommend people do that training because it's really fun because it's like 4 to 5 days. You learn self-defense, how to get through civil unrest, protest, how to get out of your car if it gets broken in. And then you also go through an active shooter, which is like at a paintball field. So it's like not like that traumatic. It could be, but it's not. It's just really, really fun and it's all paid for. So I would recommend that you guys do it.
Yes.
Hostile environment training.
Yeah. I don't know if they don't have anything in line yet for this coming year, but I think for right now we're just doing kind of one-off 1 days. But I think just signing up for their newsletter, then you'll know when things come up again. But this is a slide that Jeff made about his flower method. So really, the best way is really to go in and out during a really dynamic situation, right? People get really tempted to stay in one spot, and you can get trapped in there. So having periodically exiting is just a really important piece. And then, again, once everything is done, right? Thinking about, of course, we want to make sure everyone's made it out safe. You fulfill your editorial responsibility, you replenish your needs. Super important piece for mental health is not just doing the self-care aspects, but also connecting with supportive networks. And emphasis on supportive, right? Like it's not just connecting with people, right? It's the people who fill your cup are really, really important. And then who here does a debrief? Anyone? Debriefs are hard, right? Like if it's not part of the culture, right? How would you do it, right? So sometimes I just send out like my own one person debrief, but I just talk about what went well, if there's any close calls or anything to do better next time, and it's just a really good practice to again normalize talking about safety. All right, I don't know how much time we have. How are we on time? Probably.
We've got 15
okay,
minutes.
15 minutes. I will just do it as a group exercise then. Because I had these boards and I was going to divide you all into groups, but I think it will take much longer than that. Okay, so here's the scenario. So you're tasked with covering demonstrations in Washington, D.C. following the release of body camera footage from a police officer-involved shooting of a protester. Violence erupted at a previous rally of this kind, resulting in arrests of several journalists and protesters, right? So they want photos and video on the paper social media, right? So let's do the, hold on. All right, so this is the risk assessment template. So from that, anyone name a hazard from that scenario?
Getting arrested.
Getting arrested, thank you. So who and what is at risk for getting arrested?
The reporters on the side.
Yes, thank you. And what would you say the risk consequence would be? Yeah, moderate to severe? Yeah, sure. Would you say it's likely? How likely would you say that would be? Possible, yeah, possible.
Yes.
So okay, let's think it through, right? For arrest, what are the possible mitigation strategies that we can employ for that
Maybe
hazard?
asking the reporters to be mindful of their surroundings and leave if they feel like they're going to get arrested. So maybe just take footage up until a certain point. I would probably also recommend staying on the perimeter and trying to use like a long range lens.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Yes.
Press jacket? That's too much. I don't know.
Would you use a press jacket? I mean, it depends, right? Like this is not, for that situation, we can't completely answer, but you might have one handy.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a gray area because, like, I wouldn't do it if it was just a protest I was covering. But if there's, like, an arrest hazard, then, yeah, you're kind of trying to signal to the police that you're a journalist.
Yes, but also you want to think about the cultural context, right? Are the police antagonistic towards the press? So that's not always going to be a catch-all. But I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that there's a lot of nuance, which is pretty much every risk mitigation that we do, which is why it's important to talk about it. So again, that would be a discussion that you would have to weigh in your newsroom. Do we wear it? Do we keep it available? How available? And when is that tipping point that we switch? Which is again important conversation to have. Yes.
I don't know if this is actually creating more risk, but if you're there to capture photos and videos, at least for me, when I'm doing that, I'm very focused on what I'm capturing, that you risk not paying attention to your surroundings. So I don't know if it's a good idea to not send a single person by themselves to do that, but someone who can, help them watch their back and they can split up that work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this is absolutely where a back watcher would absolutely make sense. If it's like, especially if like the back watcher is low key, like blending in, right? They're just like casual, like it depends, right? I could be a back watcher where that person is like over there and I'm looking at the vicinity for them. If things get really tense, maybe I'm literally right behind them and just kind of pulling them back if they don't have their peripheral vision because they're so focused in, and that's okay too. So again, that's a decision on how much risk you're willing to take, right? Because by the time that, if you're really willing to be back to back with like a back watcher, that means you're really willing to get in on the action, and that's okay. But as long as you have a plan in place, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Anyone else? Yes.
When I covered protests more, I'd have like a card with the key people to call in the newsroom because you don't remember people's phone numbers anymore. So if you do get in trouble, and then also people who may be allies in the police department or something like that you know of, especially if you're local. So I had like the sheriff's phone number just in case.
Absolutely, that's great. And also I think on the managerial level, right, it's important to also know, do they know the legal processes in your newsroom? Like, do they know who they're gonna call, right? So I think, so again, if you get arrested, you only get one phone call, right? So it has to be a really good phone call, and that person has to be on your location at all times, not like having a family party, right? So again, communication and planning things out is really important. Thank you for that. Yes.
This is something that someone told us for some security training earlier this year, but like if you're in a new city, you're not familiar with like the roads, the street names, anything like that. He was saying that it's good when you have like these reunion points, if you're covering a protest or you see something is about to happen, to like have a way to designate sort of like, oh, we know we're going to meet like at this building, but if it's like a huge building, know sort of like, how are you going to coordinate where you're meeting at that building? So like you can't say meet at M and 11th if you're like in a city where you're just like in the heat of the moment, you don't know what that means and where that is. So he told us to sort of just like number the sides of the building. If it's a normal sort of like building with 4 sides, like 1 through 4, the entrance, the most obvious thing being 1, and then just going like clockwise. And so like if you're like covering a protest and something happens, he's like, agree to meet at like side 3. So then if like people like aren't there at a certain time, then like, okay, then we need to figure out what happened. But I just thought that was like I'm horrible with directions. And so I thought that was like good for someone like me. If like in the heat of the moment that you're gonna be frazzled, you're not gonna really be thinking super logically, but just a way to sort of bring it back to basics and like sort of keep safe.
Oh yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's great. I think any kind of way to remember where the meeting point is super, super important. Okay, I'm gonna do this other one because I feel like it correlates with a lot of people's concerns. So you've been working on a long-term project exposing a multi-million-dollar company's toxic waste management practices in the local community. You and your colleagues have started receiving phishing emails, and you've noticed unusual login attempts on your social media accounts. Additionally, you've been receiving threatening messages urging you to drop the story or face legal action from the company's legal team. You're also concerned for your safety as a nondescript car seems to be following you. Okay? All right, I'm gonna go back to the thing now. Okay. Any hazard that you want us to specifically kind of flesh out? There's a lot of hazards in that situation. I went crazy with it. But anyone wants to stalking? Okay, yeah, let's do the stalking. Okay. So obviously you're at risk, right? The level of risk, anyone? Severe to critical. Yeah, severe to critical. Likelihood, it's already happening, right? So it's pretty certain. Okay, so what risk mitigation would you do for that, for the stalking aspect of that scenario? Call the police, yeah, exactly. Let your editor know as well. Let your editor know. Yes, exactly. Document everything. That's great. Record. Yep. Record everything on your phone. Do location tracking. I think this is a place where you want to change your routine, right? You want to scrub your digital security. You want to buddy up. You might want to temporarily relocate, see if that's feasible. Just for a few days, see if it kind of mellows out. Anything else? Security camera? Yeah, security camera. Is it going too far to buy a weapon? I mean, I would have pepper spray on me all the time, so I guess depending on your local laws, I have to officially say, depending on your local laws. Okay. How about the digital hazard? I know that a lot of folks are concerned about their digital safety in this room. What mitigation strategies would you do?
Maybe look back at old posts and see if there's any personal information on there, location information on there, and probably delete those posts or archive them.
Great.
Change your passwords, I guess. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
I would get my phone tested to see if there's any malware on there, any sort of anything tracking basically what's going on. I would turn off microphone settings on my apps and wherever my location services are on. And I think a basic thing would be to just restart your phone in case you are hacked.
Great. There's one somewhere in the back.
On the note of digital, I'd also, if I couldn't immediately see like an air tag or something on my car, I would also be willing to just like take my car to the dealership or whatever mechanic I use and have them look to see if there's any trackers or anything that have been put on.
Great.
I'd probably, if I didn't have like the dual authentic, whatever, like the thing that you have to go, the two-step whatever login, I don't know. Thank you. Two-factor. Yeah, that thing. And then also I would probably just like turn all of my social media private at that point. And then, yeah.
Yes.
I've been told to take off my face recognition on my phone just in case they, two-factor is a thing, but if they have face recognition and they kidnap you or something, like just show it to your face, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, so the face recognition is also one of the things that we recommend. Like if you're going to a really tense protest, to make sure you turn that off. Like, of course, police officers are not allowed to do that, to grab your phone and show your face, but we never know these days. So just add layers of protection for yourself. Yeah, you guys know this. You're great. Any kind of closing questions before I talk about resources? Okay. So the resources that I have here are through the International Women's Media Foundation. There's a lot more, which is what I'm required to give you. But if you want more specific resources about other things, I am more than happy to share with you those things as well. So the IWMF has U.S. emergency funds open to journalists of all genders. They fund PPE, medical, and mental health grants, as long as you're reporting in the U.S. This is their last year of the U.S. emergency fund, so please supply. I have done that grant to fund my therapy sessions 3 years in a row. Like, they're great. Like, I mean, of course, they're not gonna pay for the full year, but they give a good amount of money to help pay for mental health. They offer one-on-one safety consultations for free with their security director or digital safety advisor. We offer a lot of virtual safety trainings and policy support. So if you feel that your newsroom is lacking in safety structure, policies, things like that, we offer support in that way. They also developed a newsroom policy guide, which is in Spanish and English, and I am happy to share these resources to you via email, and also mental health. If you're particularly concerned with online violence, you could just Google the Online Violence Response Hub, and it's really a great database where you kind of click, for example, am I actively being digitally harassed? And it kind of brings you to very targeted resources. Because we found that a lot of journalists, when they're already facing online violence, it's just too overwhelming to kind of siphon through all of the resources. So this is kind of a one-stop shop place where 100 organizations have put resources together for you. Yeah, and if I could take a moment of your time to if you could fill out a post-training survey. This is just really, really helpful as we continue to offer a lot of safety trainings. If you have any questions, would like more resources or anything like that, that is my email. And I don't think the post-training survey is as long as the pre-training survey.
I have to tell you, first, I want to say I'm really impressed by all of you and all of the techniques that you've already been employing and the way you're thinking about these things. But in 1995, I did a story for Knight Ridder, Washington. I interviewed Emmett Till's mother, Mamie Till. So that was in Chicago. I'm from Southern Illinois. I'm safe, whatever. But I also went to Hattiesburg, Mississippi to interview the wife of a civil rights pioneer named Vernon Dahmer, who was murdered in his driveway. And I rented the car and got on the highway, and I'm riding around in the backwoods of Mississippi, and a pickup truck comes up right beside me, and I'm thinking, this is how I die. I just never expected to survive that. And when I think of what I didn't know about how dangerous that could have been, and how the risks that I took, I want to go home tonight, pull the covers over my bed, and never get out again. The world is scary. But I share that with you all to say, I want you to go forward empowered by what is available in terms of keeping you physically safe, in terms of, if you need support in mental health and the stress that's getting to you, or covering a mass shooting or whatever. I am really, really almost comforted to know that people like Rosem are available and are willing to support us and help us. And I just need to take this opportunity to thank you so much for joining us. Let's show her our appreciation.
Thank you so much. It's so sweet.
I just feel like you have offered us some really important insights about the need to be mindful, not stressed, not worried, not scared, but just mindful of what's possible. And so thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing what you shared. And again, to echo what you said, I don't want this to be a scary thing, right? That sometimes safety can be so overwhelming, but if you take it small chunks at a time, like, it's possible. And, building community is a really big piece of, being safe. So this community here, make use of it. And I really appreciate everyone for just being so welcoming and for participating so well. And you made this lecture just as amazing with everything you've contributed. So thank you. Thank you.